According to an article from the Washington Post, Zoomers are postponing getting their driver's licenses and they're driving less than previous generations. Now, there are a few somewhat common sense reasons for why this is happening. For one, they're keen on minimizing the environmental impact of cars, which is something that I think, or maybe I hope, that even the older generations are mindful of. According to data from the Environmental Protection Agency, the transportation sector in the US is responsible for over 55% of our total nitrogen dioxide emissions. It also estimates that motor vehicles produced approximately 22% of total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in 2020, and compared to other sectors, emissions from the transportation sector increased the most between 1990 and 2019. Another reason that Zoomers are ditching cars: the cost of car ownership these days is ridiculously expensive. Car insurance rates alone have jumped nearly 14% from 2022 to 2023. Now, I think car expenses are just something the older generations have learned to accept as a part of life. But if you think about it like, say, an iPhone, it was once a luxury item that became a necessity as society molded its way around the technology. Sure, you can get away without having one if you really wanted to or really needed to, but living in the modern world without one won't be easy on you. Especially considering the ways in which American cities and suburbs are designed and zoned, many Americans simply can't live without a car. To remedy this, Zoomers are relying more heavily on rideshare apps. Alternatively, in some cases where the cost of a vehicle is just too great, people are choosing to co-own vehicles with their friends or family members. And then there's the general anxiety that plagues the youngest generation more than the older ones. According to data from the American Psychological Association, Gen Z is more likely than any other generation to report their own mental health as fair or poor, and they're the least likely generation to describe their mental health as very good or excellent. They cite school shootings and current events related to climate change and deportation among the top sources of their stress and anxiety. The pandemic didn't help either. In 2020, overall rates of depression and anxiety rose by over 25%, with those aged 20 to 24 experiencing the largest leaps in all of the age groups. So for all of the aforementioned reasons and more, Gen Z isn't driving as much as the previous generations. But the Zoomer disdain for cars isn't completely unrelatable. The rise of anti-car movements that promote quieter, more sustainable, and more walkable cities have become more and more prominent and more vocal in recent years. Within those communities, people tend to lament about the fact that green spaces are paved over to become parking lots and strip malls that nobody asked for, and that the highway systems have been built instead of public transit systems, leading to more car dependency, more noise and light pollution, and more actual pollution. Another aspect of car centricity is the fact that it promotes individualism at the expense of community. People feel more and more disconnected from the people that live around them, and a big part of why this is because we simply don't see our neighbors anymore. Considering the current political climate, it doesn't help that we don't know the people that we live among. The way we live contributes to a sense of otherism, which makes it easier for people to fear the people around them rather than just getting to know them. Also, research suggests a link between rising individualism and declining mental health. And while a reasonable argument can be made for the quote-unquote freedom that cars afford people, it would still be nice to not have to get in a car and drive every time I want a cup of coffee or a loaf of bread. It would also be nice not to have to sit in traffic for literally an hour and a half anytime I want to visit my best friend on the other side of town. It's not hard to understand why 78% of Americans want to see more investment in passenger rail. Now, I live in Houston, Texas, which is one of the least walkable cities in the United States for a few different reasons, so a lot of this hits pretty close to home for me. In fact, Houston is often referenced as an example of how and why car centricity isn't always ideal. Now, just to give you an idea, the freeway that I live off of was ranked the most dangerous road in America in 2021, and another Houston freeway claimed the number 4 spot. Another one of our notorious freeways has the most lanes than any other freeway in the country, boasting 26 lanes across, and yes, the traffic is still terrible. And another aspect to all of this that should really be its own topic, an aspect that again the Houston freeway system perfectly exemplifies, is the ways in which the road systems have been used to segregate cities either along racial or socioeconomic lines. In Houston, there's a highway loop that encircles the downtown and surrounding areas. Inside the loop is pretty great, but just outside of the loop is woefully and visibly overlooked. If you ever fly into Hobby Airport, which is outside of the loop, you'll literally see what I'm talking about. It's not uncommon for people to either stay within the loop or to pick a freeway and just keep driving until you hit the suburbs, just completely driving past that neglected area in between. But that whole middle area between the outer suburbs and the inner loop wasn't always the way that it is today, and city planners, rather than trying to build up those neighborhoods, insist on exacerbating the problem by proposing more highway widenings and more construction projects. Anyway, the New York Times did a whole piece on it, so you can check that out if you want more info. Am I proposing that American cities just bulldoze everything and start from scratch? No, of course I'm not. But as a millennial and as a Houstonian, I can definitely understand where these Zoomers are coming from. With President Biden looking to improve our nation's infrastructure, the administration might want to take into consideration what the young people think of the existing one. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok.